welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not just, looking at history from a distance. We're stepping right into a very specific and very dangerous corner of 17th century Paris.
Absolutely. And this isn't the swashbuckling adventure you might be expecting?
No, not at all. This is a world that's just dominated by political intrigue, royal secrets, and, well, the absolutely terrifying consequences of drawing your sword at the wrong time.
Right. We're looking at a historical mystery, and it stars that quartet we all know, Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan.
But they're not on the battlefield here. They're basically trading their swords for magnifying glasses. They're playing the role of intellectual investigators.
And that's really the brilliance of the source materials we're drawing from today, which is Sarah Dalmaida's series. It takes these characters, these inseparables that we feel like we know from Dumas,
Right.
and it drops them right into a whodunit, a classic murder mystery format. So they're not just, reacting to these big political schemes. They're on the ground, piecing together clues like a detective would.
And all of this is set against this incredibly volatile backdrop. We're talking about the French court under King Louis XIII with Cardinal Richelieu pulling all the strings.
The sources are very specific about the timing, too. They placed this investigation right in the middle of a period that was just rife with scandal.
It's basically mirroring the infamous affair of the necklace, isn't it?
Exactly that period. It's a time when the political tensions between the Queen's faction, so Anne of Austria, and the cardinals were, at an absolute fever pitch.
Fueled by what? Mistrust, secret letters.
Secret correspondence, a constant fear of assassination. And what that does is it makes the stakes of their, little homicide case infinitely higher. It grounds all this fiction in very, very real historical peril.
So our mission today is really a rescue operation that's wrapped inside a murder mystery. We're going to follow these four friends as they try to solve what, on the surface, looks like a pretty straightforward homicide.
The murder of an armorer.
Right. But what starts as this, simple effort to defend one of their own, it just unravels. It spirals into a political conspiracy, deep personal betrayal, and it forces Athos to confront his darkest, most buried secrets.
And the catalyst for all of it, the thing that kicks this whole story off, is the arrest of Porthos's servant, Mousqueton. His full name is Boniface.
And the official story, the one the Cardinal's guards put out, is immediately suspicious.
Oh, completely. They claim Mousqueton stole a sword, killed the armorer, a man named Langelier-Père, and then was just conveniently found unconscious at the scene.
Because a hammer? Chance to hit him on the head.
Chance to hit him. It's so transparent.
That's almost insulting in its convenience. You have a violent murder, and then the main suspect just happens to get a head injury that knocks him out before anyone can question him.
It's clearly a staged event. It's a trap. And as we're about to find out, this trap wasn't set by some petty thief. It was set by the most powerful man in France.
So before our heroes can even think about their first move, they have to deal with this legal minefield. We have to talk about the threat that is hanging over every single nobleman in France at this moment. The Edict of Blood.
This is absolutely critical context. The Edict of Blood completely changes the game for these men. Dueling had been illegal for a while, sure.
Right, it wasn't new, but
the old laws, they usually just meant a fine, maybe you lose your position, maybe you get banished for a bit. This new edict, though, it escalated the consequences to immediate, non-negotiable execution.
So if you're a nobleman caught in a duel, that's it.
That's it. You are to be instantly beheaded in the public square. No trial, no appeal.
It's a shift from, say, royal displeasure, which you could maybe negotiate your way out of, to an immediate and final capital offense. You can't overstate the psychological impact that has on the Musketeers.
No, you can't. These are men who are trained to fight. Their entire code of honor demands satisfaction with a sword.
And now that's illegal.
On pain of death. So it forces them to become thinkers, to become strategists and spies, because their primary way of defending their honor is suddenly off the table.
And we see how personal this is for Aramis, right?
Oh, absolutely. The whole reason he became a musketeer in the first place, he was this brilliant divinity student. On his way to the church was because of a duel.
He killed an officer who insulted him.
Right. And under this new edict, that act would meant the executioner's block, period. So the cardinal is leveraging this legal terror, this constant threat of death, to keep the king's musketeers, who are fiercely loyal to the queen, sort of subdued and looking over their shoulders.
Okay, so if the stakes are that high, why go after Mousqueton, a servant? Why risk stirring up the entire musketeer company over him?
Well, that's the political chess game that their captain de Treville reveals to them.
Yeah.
He has to be the pragmatic one here.
Voice of reason.
Exactly. He explains that Mousqueton's arrest has nothing to do with the armorer's death. It has everything to do with Cardinal Richelieu believing, and he's probably right, that there's a fresh conspiracy against his life. Richelieu is paranoid, and he's looking for leverage.
And he finds that leverage in some intercepted letters.
He does. His spy network intercepted correspondence between Queen Anne and her. Well, her famously conspiratorial friend, the Duchess de Chevreuse.
Whom the cardinal just dismissively calls Marie Michon.
Right. And those letters, whatever was actually in them, were enough for Richelieu to suspect the Queen's faction was hatching a plot. Maybe regicide, or at the very least, a plot to get rid of him.
So Mousqueton, as Porthos's loyal servant, is suddenly turned into a political pawn.
That's exactly what he is. He's being held not because anyone thinks he's a murderer, but because he's a highly valued, incredibly loyal servant to a musketeer who is firmly in the Queen's camp.
Richelieu is just squeezing the Queen's household, trying to force a confession or get someone to crack.
He's applying maximum pressure, and the source material captures this dynamic just perfectly later on when Athos finally confronts Richelieu.
And Athos, with his strategic mind, he sees this game immediately.
He does. When he gets his audience with the cardinal, Richelieu basically treats Mousqueton like a bargaining chip. He even suggests that Athos might betray de Treville's just to save his servant.
Which is a huge insult to Athos's honor.
A profound insult. And this is where you see Athos shift from just being a swashbuckler to this incredible strategist. He recognizes how deep Richelieu's fear of regicide is, and he makes this brilliant declaration. He looks at the cardinal, who sees this all as a chess move, and he says, "A queen is worth more than a pawn. The trade won't be made."
Let's unpack that line because it feels like a major turning point. What is he actually offering there? And why does it work?
He's offering security by saying a queen is worth more than a pawn. He's subtly agreeing with Richelieu's basic premise that the bigger threat is the political conspiracy, not some servant.
He's playing on the cardinal's own paranoia.
He's flipping the equation. He's implicitly offering Richelieu the services of his own keen investigative mind. He's offering the full loyalty of the Comte de la Fère, not necessarily the musketeer Athos, to investigate this plot against the cardinal if Richelieu gives him 1 week, just 1 week to clear Mousqueton of the murder charge.
He's weaponizing his own nobility. He's saying, look, I'm a nobleman. My first duty is to the stability of the crown. That means protecting the queen from false accusations. So give me time to solve this little murder, and in return, I'll help protect you from your much bigger fears.
It's a spectacular move. Athos knows the cardinal fears the queen and her friends way more than he fears any single musketeer. By sort of validating the threat, because whether the plot is real or not, Richelieu believes it is, Athos gets the leverage he needs.
And Richelieu, impressed by this, calculated honor, he agrees.
He concedes the week.
So the immediate danger is off the table for 7 days.
Yeah.
But Athos, being Athos, the ultimate protector, he realizes this goes beyond just Mousqueton.
Absolutely. He knows if Richelieu is willing to use one servant as a pawn, he won't hesitate to use others. So in this rare moment of caution, instead of just rushing into a fight, he orders this critical safety measure.
He tells his friends to get their own servants, Grimaud and Planchet, to his house immediately.
And he lays down a strict rule. They are not to leave without one of the musketeers present. No exceptions.
He's acting like the head of this, well, highly dysfunctional but incredibly loyal family. He might have left his title and his lands behind 20 years ago, but these men, they're servants. They're his new lineage, and he's going to protect them from the cardinal's net.
Which brings us to the investigation itself.
Right. The political clock is ticking. They have 1 week. And the musketeers just spring into action. What's so wonderful here is how each man tackles the mystery based entirely on his own personality.
You get 3 distinct but interlocking lines of inquiry.
Let's start with Porthos, the big guy, the physical, pragmatic investigator.
Porthos is driven by this really intense, almost sentimental loyalty. He has a genuine soft heart for Mousqueton, who he rescued from poverty years ago. He just cannot stand the injustice of the official story.
So while Athos and Aramis are debating court intrigue,
Porthos takes immediate, overwhelming physical action.
which is to say, he breaks into the crime scene violently.
Late at night, he goes to the armory And the sources make it clear this was not an easy door. It's heavy oak, sturdy lock. But Porthos is, well, he's Porthos. He's compared to biblical giants. He just applies this immense single-minded force.
He doesn't pick the lock.
No, he assaults the door. The wood splinters, the lock mechanism is torn completely from the frame. It's classic Porthos, overwhelming force to solve a practical problem.
And once he's inside, he's not looking for a bloody cloak or a hidden letter. His goal is much more practical.
Exactly. He's there to disprove the police logic. He's looking for physical evidence that the scene was staged. He sees these massive high racks where swords are stored, and he immediately notes that heavy things, like hammers, aren't stored up there. It makes no sense.
And you can't just grab a sword easily either.
No, you need a special shepherd's crook hook to get them down from those high racks. So Porthos reasons that there's no way Mousqueton could have easily grabbed a sword, killed the armorer, and then had a random heavy hammer fall perfectly on his head to knock him out.
The whole story falls apart under basic practical scrutiny.
It was definitively staged to frame him. He cuts right through the flimsy police report with just hands-on knowledge of how a smithy actually works.
But while he's in there, he runs into a little complication.
A big one. D'Artagnan is also inside, but he's in disguise.
So they have this fantastic moment of accidental collaboration.
They do. And they quickly realize that the noise Porthos made splintering the door has attracted a crowd, a big, curious crowd. And if Porthos, the master of the arrested servant, is caught inside the murder scene,
That's a guarantee challenge, a duel, and under the Edict of Blood.
that means execution. They need a way out, and they need it fast.
This calls for some of that famous Gascon ingenuity.
Oh, absolutely. D'Artagnan throws himself on the ground, pretends he's just waking up, and then, in front of this horrified crowd, he spins this incredibly elaborate ghost story.
Amazing.
He claims he saw a monstrous tall creature dressed all in white, enveloped in a red light, and it was beating something that looked like a sword made of men's bones.
A sword made of men's bones. That is just theatrical genius.
And it works perfectly. You have to remember, Paris in the 17th century is profoundly superstitious. The crowd just scatters in terror, convinced they've seen some kind of infernal vision.
Which allows Porthos to escape.
Right. He even pretends D'Artagnan is his new misbehaving servant, Henri Bayard, and he drags him off, scolding him for being a bad boy.
It's this brilliant little piece of impromptu theater that really highlights D'Artagnan's quick thinking.
Especially since he'd left his sword outside to keep his disguise.
Which brings us perfectly to D'Artagnan's own investigation. The undercover agent. He's the one who insists on checking out the neighborhood around the armory. He's not focused on the high-level politics. He wants the local truth.
D'Artagnan just knows that if the official story is a lie, the neighborhood gossip is probably a lot closer to the truth, so he insists on dressing down. He modifies a suit of Planchet's, which ironically used to be his own old suit, to look like
A country boy fresh in the city.
a young man from a farmer's household, just come from Gascony. He's trying to just blend in, become anonymous.
And Athos has this wonderfully wry observation about it. It says so much about class and perception in that world.
It really does. Athos, with his typical aristocratic sort of detachment, he notes that D'Artagnan fits the part all too well. He complains that people keep offering D'Artagnan food and trying to help him, treating him like a genuine city waif.
Whereas
Athos claims that even if he put on those same rags, his posture, his noble bearing, the weight of being the Comte de la Fère would still make him look like one of the noblest men in the land.
It's a great little moment of humor, but it also shows how effortlessly Athos carries that nobility, even when he's trying to hide it.
But D'Artagnan's disguise works. It pays off immediately because he earns the trust of a local baker named Ferrand.
And what does the baker tell him?
The baker reveals the crucial bit of neighborhood gossip that shifts this whole case. It turns it from a political conspiracy back into a personal homicide. Apparently, the armorer, L'Angelier, was actively trying to blackmail Mousqueton.
Blackmail him how?
Well, Porthos owed a big debt for sword repairs, and L'Angelier was using that debt as leverage to force Mousqueton to marry his cross-eyed daughter, Faustine.
Who just happened to have a good dowry.
Oh, a very generous dowry. So this is huge. It completely changes the motive. Suddenly you have a clear personal reason for a fight. Mousqueton, who is deeply in love with someone else, now has a powerful reason to confront the armorer, or maybe his son, over this whole forced marriage plot.
It confirms Athos's suspicion that the real motive here was local and financial, not just political. And it gives them a real suspect.
It does. Either L'Angelier or his son, Pierre, who would be directly affected by any changes to the inheritance that marriage would bring.
Okay, so that leaves Aramis.
Yeah.
He's the man of the court, the scholar, the emotional intelligence guy, so he naturally starts his investigation at the palace.
Right. His cover story is that he's going to inform Mousqueton's lover, a maid named Hermengarde, about his arrest.
But being back in the palace gardens affects him deeply.
It does. The sources really delve into his grief, this profound, enduring grief he has for his murdered lover, Violette, the Duchess de Dreux. The whole atmosphere of the court just brings that pain rushing back. And he makes this really surprising confession to Hermengarde. He says that since Violette's death, he feels like half a creature.
It's a very honest moment. It cuts right through his usual suave, reserved persona.
And that emotional connection, that vulnerability, it gets him some crucial testimony from Hermengarde.
She confirms the marriage plot.
She does. And crucially, she reveals that she herself was secretly involved with the armorer's son, Pierre Langelier. And this Pierre, he's blonde, he's elegant, he's a known gambler, basically the total opposite of the pragmatic Mousqueton. And now Hermengarde is pregnant.
And she's not sure who the father is.
She's not. It could be Mousqueton or it could be Pierre. But she strongly suspects that Pierre killed his own father. And she gives a key identifying detail. Langelier père had distinctive snow-white hair, which would make it very easy to tell the victim apart from his blonde, elegant son.
So she's pointing the finger directly at her other lover, Pierre. He's got the motive inheritance, gambling debts, and he had the opportunity.
Right. But Aramis, being Aramis, he can't just stick to the murder. He also has to probe the political angle.
Which leads him to his voluptuous adversary, the Duchess de Chevreuse, Marie Michon.
He's trying to figure out this queen's conspiracy, and Marie Michon is an excellent, if very dangerous, source of information.
Now, we need to be very clear for everyone listening. There are two important women in this story.
Yes. Marie Michon, the Duchess de Chevreuse, is the high-level political plotter. She's the queen's friend, Aramis's voluptuous adversary.
And then there's Milady.
Milady, or Charlotte, is the personal, vengeful enemy. She is Athos's supposed-to-be dead wife, the Black Spider, two very different, very dangerous women.
Okay, so Aramis goes to Marie Michon.
And she immediately denies any plot to kill the king. But she freely admits she's always involved in some conspiracy, and even points to a letter she's writing to the king's half-brother.
Classic deflection. And what does she say about Athos?
This is fascinating. She reveals something about the intensity of the Musketeers' friendship. She complains that Athos's friends are wresting him from my bed.
She sees their brotherhood as a kind of romantic rivalry.
She does. She clarifies later that it was a metaphorical fight for his love and attention. She's basically annoyed that the demands of their friendship kept Athos and Aramis, too, from being fully available for her courtly games. It just shows how even these major political players can be reduced to, well, petty jealousy over the bond these four men share.
Perfect. So, to sum up this part, Porthos has physical proof the crime scene was staged. D'Artagnan has found the financial blackmail and the marriage motive. And Aramis has a prime suspect, Pierre Langelier, while also getting confirmation of the political plot that Athos can use as leverage.
They have a solid case. The pieces are all there.
Okay, so Athos has played this masterful game of political chess with Richelieu. But this entire investigation is forcing him to shed that skin of Athos and confront his true, devastating identity as the Comte de la Fère.
His whole strategy with Richelieu set the stage for this massive personal collapse. His move was extraordinary because it wasn't about bravado, it was about status.
He went to the Palais Cardinal alone.
And he identified himself by his true, abandoned title, the Comte de la Fère, and Richelieu's men knew the name instantly, which tells you a lot about the Cardinal surveillance network, but also about the weight that name still carried.
And he used that weight for one reason only, to buy Mousqueton 1 week of safety.
Yes, and he framed it as something necessary to protect the cardinal from the much bigger plot he was afraid of. And when Richelieu tried to, diminish the request, suggesting Athos would trade his principles for a mere servant.
Athos was deeply offended.
Profoundly. That's when he delivers that just chilling line, "A queen is worth more than a pawn. The trade won't be made." He successfully traded his own time and expertise for the safety of a servant he values, simply by playing on Richelieu's deepest paranoia.
That moment should have been a victory.
Oh.
He walked into the lion's den and walked out without compromising his honor. But as he's leaving the palace, a ghost from his past just materializes. It stops him cold.
The sources convey the shock perfectly. He's utterly paralyzed. He sees a foreign lady at the palace, dressed richly, walking with confidence, and a guard addresses her in English as Milady.
It's Charlotte, his wife, The woman he thought he had hanged 2 decades earlier.
The emotional shock is just immense. It turns this moment of strategic triumph into one of pure personal horror.
And this sighting, it forces Athos to finally unburden himself. There's this incredibly raw scene, fueled by wine and anguish, late that night with his 3 friends. Tell us in detail about the horror that the Comte de la Fère finally reveals.
This confession is the deep dive into Athos's core trauma. He tells them he was this proud, maybe a little naive young nobleman, and he married the beautiful, seemingly pious sister of a local curate. He ignored the difference in their social status because he was in love.
It was a rush of passion and idealism.
Completely. And then just 1 week after the wedding,
What happened?
they were out hunting, and his wife got her dress caught on a low branch. In a panic, trying to help her breathe, Athos cut the dress away, and he saw it.
The brand.
The brand of a criminal. A fleur-de-lis burned into her shoulder, the mark of infamy. It meant she was a felon, someone worthy of the gallows.
The collision of what he thought was innocence and this sudden, undeniable proof of infamy. His entire world, his honor, his love. It must have just collapsed in that single second.
It drove him to madness. He was just overwhelmed by the thought of his ancient, noble family name being tied to a branded criminal. He didn't think, he reacted with the terrible, reflexive judgment of his class.
He took a rope from his saddlebag.
Hanged her from a low branch in the woods of his own estate, and he fled. He took the name Athos, and for 20 years he carried the belief that he had murdered the only woman he'd ever loved.
And now that murdered past is alive and standing in the cardinal's court. The psychological torment must be just overwhelming. Why didn't she ever contact him if she survived? Or try to explain the brand?
That is the agonizing question that just tortures him. His entire identity, his cynical detachment, his heavy drinking, it's all built on the honor he was trying to protect and the terrible crime he committed to bury that dishonor.
He's grappling with 2 impossible truths.
Right. If she survived, maybe she didn't love him enough to ever seek him out, which just compounds the betrayal. And if she was branded, her crime must have been so severe that, in his mind, his summary execution of her was justified by his code of honor, which just compounds his guilt.
He realized that running away and becoming Athos didn't protect him at all.
No. It just meant he was waiting for the very doom he tried to outrun.
And before he retreats completely into this crisis, he has one more strange conversation with Marie Michon, the Duchess de Chevreuse. He needs to check if she's politically reliable.
And this conversation is just bizarre. It's so compelling. Marie Michon treats him almost like a physical specimen.
She inspects him.
Physically. She comments on his excellent musculature. She guesses his age, says he's likely past 30, and she confirms that the fight Aramis mentioned was metaphorical, just a rivalry with his friends for his romantic attention.
She's a master of deflection and flirtation. She uses it to disarm him.
Absolutely. And when Athos presses her on the regicide plot, she reveals this critical insight into her own character. She concedes that, yes, she believes the cardinal deserves to die. She admits it openly. I do wish to kill the cardinal.
But not the king.
Never the king. She asks Athos rhetorically if he could really suspect her of wanting to depose the queen, her best friend. And that distinction is vital for Athos. It teaches him he can trust her visceral political hatred for Richelieu, but he can never, ever trust her commitment to the law.
So while Athos is confronting these ghosts from his past, D'Artagnan is experiencing a very sharp escalation of danger, both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, he gets summoned by Constance, Madame Bonacieux, but the meeting just turns into a complete disaster.
It's a devastating sequence of events.
D'Artagnan shows up, and Constance immediately confronts him. She's heard a false rumor that he was fighting a duel, and given the edict of blood, her fear is real. She thinks his life is on the line. But while they're arguing about this,
They're ambushed
by 6 cloaked swordsmen. This wasn't a duel, it was a vicious, orchestrated attack. And D'Artagnan is badly wounded. He gets a deep cut to the bone on his arm.
He survives the attack, but the emotional betrayal comes immediately after.
The irony is just brutal. While D'Artagnan is trying to assure Constance he was ambushed, not dueling, he reaches for a handkerchief to, stop her tears, and he pulls out one he'd gotten from Ermengarde,
The maid.
the maid who had recently been at the Duchess de Chevreuse's residence, and the handkerchief has the monogram M.A.R. on it.
For Marie Michon, the Duchess? Oh no.
The miscommunication is just agonizing. Constance immediately assumes the absolute worst.
That he's cheating on her with a noblewoman. With a duchess, throwing their love away for courtly ambition.
Her insecurity and rage just boil over. She furiously breaks off their affair, throws the key to his lodgings at his feet, and says he'd be happier with the princess everyone told him he deserved.
So D'Artagnan is left bleeding and heartbroken.
A victim of a total misjudgment, rooted entirely in Aramis's convoluted court affairs and the, visual evidence of a noble's monogram, the betrayal cuts him deeper than the sword did.
So while D'Artagnan is suffering, Aramis, who is a magnet for this kind of Baroque intrigue, faces his own ambush.
Shortly after leaving Athos's house, he's hit on the head and he wakes up in a state of just utter disorientation.
He finds himself enclosed in, a clothes press, a trunk?
Something like that, yeah. And it's bouncing violently inside an ox cart heading out into the country. The scene is completely absurd, but it's crucial to the plot. It's all based on a simple case of mistaken identity by a couple of, rustic bumpkins.
Who are his abductors? Why did they grab him?
They're two countrymen named Jean and Marc, and their relatives, a local woman named Marie who Pierre Langelier got pregnant.
The armorer's son, the killer.
Right, and they believed Aramis, who was also blonde, slender, and elegant, was Pierre Langelier. In the dim moonlight near the armory, they looked similar enough for a quick, brutal kidnapping.
So their goal wasn't murder or ransom?
No, it was to force a marriage. They were going to make Aramis marry Marie and use the money from the armory that Pierre was supposed to inherit to support her and the baby.
And Aramis tries to reason with them.
He tries his intellectual charm first, but they're simple men motivated by family pride, so then he uses his voice.
His singing talent.
Yes. He launches into this beautiful, powerful Te Deum sung perfectly in Latin. And this religious performance actually silences them for a minute. They stop making fun of him and admit with this kind of grudging respect that they paid attention to the singy parts of the Mass.
But his singing doesn't break him out of the trunk.
No, that required physical force. Once the fury of his situation really takes over, he uses his formidable trained strength, honed by years of intense swordplay, and uses his back and legs to just push and strain against the wooden lid until the box literally breaks open.
A dramatic exit. And then, in a moment of pure strategic brilliance, Aramis decides to turn his abductors into his allies.
He co-opts them, Jean and Marc. He appeals to their sense of justice. He realizes they can be useful in catching the real murderer, Pierre Langelier, who they reveal is a mercenary fool and a gambler. So he's just gained two, albeit misguided, allies who are driven by a very violent sense of local familial justice.
And while D'Artagnan and Aramis are going through their own personal tortures, the true motive for the murder gets solidified back in Paris.
Yeah, Athos and Porthos, while they're waiting for the others, get this devastating news. Ermengarde,
Mousqueton's lover, the maid who gave Aramis the key information.
She's been found dead in the garden, run through with a sword.
This is a definitive clue. This eliminates any lingering doubt that this was political.
Exactly. Ermengarde was the main witness to Pierre Langelier's movements, and she was pregnant with a child who could ruin his inheritance. Her death confirms this was a personal homicide, and it points directly to Pierre Langelier as a cold-blooded killer who is systematically getting rid of threats.
With Ermengarde's murder, the Musketeers have all the proof they need. But before they set the final trap, Porthos takes this admirable little detour, driven entirely by that soft heart of his.
He does. He manages to bribe his way into the Bastille, risking his own freedom under the Edict of Blood, just to bring Mousqueton a stolen dish of stewed pigeons and apples.
He's risking his life for a hot meal for his servant.
He is. He claims the dish was prepared expressly by the Princess de something or other, just to assure the guard of its quality. The audacity is incredible.
And Mousqueton, even locked up in the Bastille, provides the final, essential clues.
He confirms Ermengarde's affair with Pierre Langelier, and he notes that Pierre often wore this distinctive blue suit that made him look like a musketeer, which helped him get into the palace.
And he confirms the inheritance plot.
Crucially, yes. Langelier père was threatening to disinherit Pierre in favor of the daughter, Faustine, if Mousqueton helped expose Pierre's ruinous gambling debts. So Pierre had a motive of desperation to kill his father, and then to kill Ermengarde to silence her.
And Mousqueton also reveals a brilliant little bit of self-preservation he's been up to in his cell.
Yes. He managed to secretly pry up a loose flagstone in his cell floor, creating a little tunnel to a cellar below where he's been pilfering wine. Even under the harshest confinement, Mousqueton is resourceful and well-hydrated.
Okay, so with the motive and the culprit crystal clear, it's time to set the trap. Athos, Aramis, and Porthos need to force a confession out of Pierre Langelier, and they choose the perfect lure.
A woman who lives for danger.
Athos proposes the Duchess de Chevreuse, Marie Michon.
And she accepts immediately. She's thrilled by the idea of danger and, as she says, madcap defiance of odds. She's the perfect choice. She has the status to approach him and the quick wit to handle herself.
The confrontation is set at the armory. The Duchess goes in and confronts Pierre, claiming she's a busybody who saw him commit the murder. She's trying to force him to react violently.
And he immediately cracks under the pressure. He grabs the Duchess, holds a dagger to her throat, and starts shouting at the Musketeers who are lurking nearby to drop their swords.
And this is the moment where the Edict of Blood becomes the defining factor.
It's everything. Athos and Aramis are ready to leap to her defense, but if they draw their swords, they are dead men. They'll be executed.
So how did Aramis use his new rustic allies to solve this impossible problem?
This is the most crucial piece of analysis here. It's not just slapstick comedy. This is Aramis using rural brute force as a legal shield.
Okay.
Just as the confrontation is at its most tense, Mark, one of the rustic abductors, executes his part of the plan. He stampedes his livestock, a pig, goats, chickens, right through the kitchen door and into the middle of the fight.
The resulting chaos, which the sources capture perfectly as the sound of a moo and a cackle and an oink-oink, is pure genius.
The absolute bedlam of stampeding farm animals, feathers, dung, it provides the perfect distraction. Pierre Langelier is completely thrown off. He's trying to get away from the animals.
And in that moment,
The Duchess, proving her own bravery, uses that moment to get her own small knife to Pierre's throat. And the Musketeers, who never had to draw their steel, physically overwhelm him.
so the chaos was a non-lethal, highly effective legal maneuver. They got their killer without breaking the Edict of Blood.
Exactly. Pierre Langelier is quickly tied up. And then, for a final bit of poetic justice, he's forced to marry the pregnant Marie by a bon curé.
And his ultimate fate.
He is delivered to the cardinal, tied up, and put in a box, a witty reversal of what happened to Aramis. The murder is solved, the political game is over, and Mousqueton is freed.
But while his friends are celebrating, D'Artagnan, still wounded and heartbroken, is walking straight into the real enemy's trap, the serpent's nest.
Immediately after his brutal fight with Constance, D'Artagnan, driven by his inherent chivalry, rescues a beautiful foreign woman from some ruffians.
This is the trap.
This is the trap. He's invited to her home, the noble foreigner, and he's served this sweet, sparkling wine until his mind is just confused and clouded.
This is Milady, Athos's wife, Charlotte, now working for the cardinal.
And seeking revenge. And D'Artagnan, even in his confused state, he notices a highly suspicious detail that echoes Athos's story. Her nightgown is buttoned up completely in the back, all the way to her neck. She is clearly consciously hiding the fleur-de-lis brand.
And when he tries to leave, realizing something is very wrong, she turns on him.
Violently, she attacks him with a dagger, screaming the ultimate accusations: murder, thief, rape.
He has to escape.
D'Artagnan, still recovering from his other wound, manages to roll off the high bed. He grabs a nearby Cupid's statuette from a desk, uses it to smash a window, and in this desperate naked flight, he scales the rooftops, grabbing his clothes midair while she's still screaming, creating a massive commotion that he barely gets away from.
It's a moment of pure, terrifying survival. He's escaped the ultimate predator.
For now.
That terrifying, chaotic escape confirms the worst suspicions that Athos had. The ghost of his past is now flesh and blood. She's powerful, and she's actively hunting them.
Aramis, recovering from his own ordeal, is the one who confirms it to a weary Athos. The foreign lady D'Artagnan met is, indeed, the Black Spider, Charlotte, Milady.
And she's working for the cardinal.
Actively. Aramis confirms that she wants revenge against the musketeer who wronged her Athos and has asked for our heads as her reward.
So they solve the local mystery, the murder of the armorer, but in doing so, they've uncovered this ultimate existential enemy. Athos' past, but now empowered by Richelieu.
It's the perfect high-stakes conclusion to this part of the story, and it's really worth noting how d'Almeida treats D'Artagnan in this confrontation.
How so?
Well, in the traditional Dumas narrative, D'Artagnan often has this complicated, sometimes immoral entanglement with Milady. But here, the source material reinforces his moral purity. D'Artagnan is explicitly loyal to Constance, he's heartbroken by her misjudgment, and he's victimized by Milady's calculated malice.
He's the hero whose chivalry is exploited, not the ambitious young man who falls for temptation. And the ultimate fate of the real murderer, Pierre Langelier, is this wonderful mix of, frontier justice and courtly politics.
Married, boxed up, and delivered to the cardinal. And the four friends, with their servants, they celebrate the resolution.
And Jean and Marc, the rustic abductors, even contribute to the feast.
They do. They provide this massive spread of roast chicken and ham, swearing that the dozen or so chickens and pigs had got badly trampled or burned in the hearth after being stampeded into the kitchen.
The fruits of chaos, indeed. But the final note leaves Athos and us with this inescapable challenge that goes way beyond politics or murder.
Athos gets a note from Milady. It's a simple, chilling, silly dare, and he's left just contemplating it, wondering in his heart if he dares accept. His personal demon has returned not as some memory to be drunk away, but as a direct, present, and empowered adversary who knows all of his weaknesses.
The true lesson that's woven through all these sources, from the Edict of Blood to these personal betrayals, isn't really about the sword fight. It's about the burden of the past.
Exactly. Athos spent 20 years trying to outrun the dishonor of the Comte de la Fère by becoming Athos, the cynical musketeer. And yet, running from his noble name led him directly back to the very woman, the very secret, the very dishonor he tried to bury.
He risked his life every day as Athos, but he was always waiting for the doom he tried to outrun as the Comte de la Fère.
The true danger wasn't the political conspiracy, which they navigated flawlessly. It's the ghost of one's own past, given flesh and blood by a powerful enemy. And it raises this unavoidable question for all of us. What secrets from your own past might a powerful enemy use against you? Because those are the vulnerabilities that no amount of swordplay can ever solve.